Hello there and welcome. In this video we're going to look at one of the most enduring iron designs ever produced, and in doing so we'll follow the timeline of this classic club. We'll pause at a significant milestone that's always been of particular interest to me, and we'll solve the sequence of events that surround it and also the key dates, and we'll finish by looking at the continuing story of this classic club design.
If you've watched many videos on the channel, you know that I've got quite a fascination with the John Letters Master Model series, with the reverse muscle back, what it's often referred to, with additional weight on the top line. It's a design that's been around for a long time. The earliest example that I'm aware of is what's called the DW brand. And here we can see a hickory shafted club, so this must date at the very latest into the 1930s. Could even date back to the 1920s, I'm not sure. But this is when that sort of style first appeared. I've not seen any earlier than that. But while I've got these two on the table, it is interesting to note the difference in the length of the heads. The older club has got a much longer head. I'll measure them and put the lengths up, but it's quite clear there that the hickory shafted club has got a longer head on it. But anyway, coming back to the John Letters club, it's been a bit of an obsession with me to try and find out exactly when this Masters model first appeared. I've heard various stories about a club being brought back from America following the Ryder Cup in 1947, and the clubs appearing after that. But just recently, by way of some old Golf Monthly magazines, I've found a few dating clues that I think get me as close as I'm ever likely to be. So before we look at those, let's just have a quick look at the full lineup of this style of club that I've got. So first off, we've got the hickory version, so let's call that 1930s. We've then got a early steel shafted version with a coated shaft. It probably is a Pyratone shaft, this one. Let's just see if I can see who it's by. It does say there made in USA, and it's quite a thick shaft, so I'm pretty sure that would be a Pyratone shaft. It's got a Ben Sayers grip on it. That was added later, I would guess. The club itself, as with the hickory version, is an FH Ayres club. Well, it doesn't actually say so on this one, but Staino Russ was one of their special marks. So that's a 1930s club, I would guess. The design then seems to have disappeared from Britain, and it shows its face again in America with McGregor when they brought out the Tommy Armour range. Whether Tommy Armour, when he moved to America, took some examples of the DW brand with him, it's impossible to say. But the next time we see an example in Britain is the Fred Daly, and there's a whole range of similar clubs that were brought out by members of the John Letters advisory panel. For instance, here we've got a Bill Cox. And these two, I'll just bring them down a little bit so we can see the ferrules. Very similar ferrules. The Fred Daly has got the remains of a True Temper dynamic shaft, which would date it somewhere in the 1940s up to about 1954. We've then got an Arthur Lees version here. This one's got a different ferrule, and it's got a True Temper rocket shaft. So that one will be post 1954, I think. Just move these over a little bit. I'm running out of space. And finally, the examples that I've got myself is this Jack Hawkins one, who was another member of the advisory panel, the same ferrule as the Arthur Lees, and again it's a rocket shaft, so again it's a later version. There are other examples that I've seen of the Masters model with members of the advisory panel, and they include Max Faulkner and Flory van Doink, the Belgian golfer. Let's take those out of the way now and come back to the dating. This copy of Golf Monthly from March 1971 was their Diamond Jubilee number, and in it there's an article, Great Players I've Watched, and that's by Di Reese. We can see there Walter Hagen, but he talks about a trip that he made to America with Charlie Ward, and at that time, in this section here, it tells how he met with Tommy Armour, who gave both Charlie and Di Reese a set of Armour clubs. It says here, so he gave us each a set made by the firm making the Armour clubs, which would be McGregor, and it was the best model club he'd ever seen up until then. I brought these clubs home. They were studied and examined by one of the British club making firms, who subsequently produced a highly successful model of their own. And that trip was made in the winter of 1946. So he would have come back to the UK sometime early 1947, I would think, and then the clubs would have gone, as we know now, to John Letters, and John Letters worked on them, and the earliest date I can find for Masters Models clubs being advertised, if we look at this example of Golf Monthly from May 1948, on page 5 we've got a Letters advert, and it just says Bridge Clubs, Fred Daly. Golf clubs are played by most professionals, including Fred Daly. So no mention of the Masters model there. But then in the next magazine, or the next month's magazine, June 1948, we have this advert. At last, the Masters model clubs. We're pleased to advise the golfing public that the long-awaited Masters model, as played by our Open and Match Play champion, is now available at professional shops and sports emporiums. So I think that this pretty clearly would be the date when the clubs became available. There was a lot of restrictions around this time, just after the war, and most golf clubs that were produced for export to boost the economy of the country after the war, try and pay the war debt. So this looks like it's when the clubs became available for purchase. So June 1948. Most modern magazines tend to be a month ahead of the actual month. So for instance, June 2024 would be issued in May 2024. This one does include in the trade notes club successes. Fred Daly, when he won the Dunlop Southport tournament, played as he always does with the new Master Model golf clubs produced by John Letters and Company Limited. And that Southport tournament was held in early May 1948. Whether he used those clubs to win the 1947 Open and the match play is anybody's guess. They certainly don't seem to have been available for use by the general public, but they could have been made in limited numbers for use by professionals to test them out. But as far as being available to the public, I think I can pretty much safely say June 1948 would be the date for that. So that ties up a loose end that I've had for quite a while.
So, if the Masters model heralded the return of this classic design to the UK, what impact did it have, and how did other UK manufacturers respond? It's fair to say that the impact was huge, and John Letters sold many sets of Master model clubs, and most other manufacturers responded by bringing out their own versions over the years. Some are shown here. Gradage Bobby Lock Triple Crown, the Blue Spot sold by Sparkbrook, the Slazenger Pinehurst, John Letters again with some later models, the Gary Player Master Model and the Bernard Gallagher Master Model. John Letters on his own this time when he set up his own company Creighton Golf and the Classic Model. Dunlop with the Bob Charles, a left-handed version. McGee of Scotland and the Tiger T. Harold Burdenson and the Max Faulkner Avenger. And the St Andrew Golf Company and their Sweepstakes model. And the design was used by manufacturers across the world until quite recently. Here we have an example by Mizuno, who made several versions. We show the Mizuno Pro MS1 and MS3. Greg Norman liked the design too and used it in his highly regarded Cobra Greg Norman forged model. But I just said until quite recently, and in fact there have been very few examples of the design in the last 10 or so years. Why might that be? I believe that it's because the concept of the design was to keep the ball flight down for a penetrating flight. But all golf ball development in recent years has been about keeping spin down on longer shots, and so today's ball has a low trajectory without any need for help from the club. In fact, most modern iron designs, even those for better players, put weight on the sole of the club. Well, that about wraps things up. It was a bit of a Golf Club Geeks one, this was, but I did want to tell the story. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!